We have a real issue here of obesity because it's growing. Although the stats might say it's smaller growing, it's still a major challenge. You look around you, you know that people are struggling with weight, and not just weight, the other issues that come with it, the anxiety, the loss of productivity, the loss of self-esteem. And how do we resolve it? Well, we have to get people to take responsibility for themselves. That has to be the start point. Now, that's not always as straightforward as saying, we're not going to help you if you don't do anything, because some people need more support than others. But certainly as a city, we've spent, or as a country, we've spent a lot of money trying to intervene and educate, and those things have a place, but we've actually got to be able to say to people, if you want to live till you're 80 or to 100 a good life, you are the most important person in that decision making.
Welcome back to the Perform Well podcast. This is the podcast for you if you're looking for performance and wellness optimization so that you can not only smash your career, but also have a better life, better relationships, and better health. We believe that performance and wellness are yin and yang and work together. So listen in as we dive into topics that are going to help you optimize your life for the better. Welcome back to another episode of the Perform Well podcast. And today we have Daniel Fitzhenry, an entrepreneur and politician since 2008, I believe.
Yep.
Wild, mate. It's wonder having you on the podcast because I've seen you around Ocean Village plenty of times. Mm-hmm. As you can see, anyone watching this today, Ocean Village is behind us. Absolutely gorgeous place.
Sunshine as well.
Well, today, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah,
We've had some podcasts that's just been raining the whole time. We're like, what a great backdrop. But it's great having you on. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, thanks, Dan. Yeah, I'm
Good. So we want to delve into, obviously, your life, and we want to kind of get more kind of stories. This podcast is more kind of a story-driven podcast. We want to know more about you. So give us a bit of background on yourself and why you're doing the role you do to this day.
Well, there's a question. Thank you. Yeah, so I was very lucky. I started work at a very young age. I was like 8 or 9, helping my family business, which was sort of a fruit and veg market stall. I went to work really early, sort of got up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, helped the guys unload the stock and sell stuff and wash product, and it was really cool. So that really gave me an entrepreneurial piece, and my family were very politically opinionated, let's put it that way. So that got me a really early exposure in terms of my lifespan of how I've got here to both business and politics. But I think that, excuse me, my voice is a little crossy and breathing's a little deeper today than usual. But my exposure to all that, the sort of key thing was I like driving change. I like to see how we can serve and how things are evolving and how the status quo doesn't need to be the same all the time and to be ahead of that. And so my whole life story has really been about taking that to the edge and failing, blowing up millions multiple times and failing a lot, but failing hard, fast, young, and in a way that once you get over the feeling of the guilt, the shame and everything else, you can really drive it forward. So I've been lucky to get to this stage now, late 30s, in a place where I'm like, right, how can I serve, how can I lead, what can I do to add value in the world, and can I use that in a way that's productive and service to others.
Mate, I love it. And from what I read online, I think you started in politics at age 15. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I was elected, 2001. Yeah, I was elected to represent Southampton in 2001 as the member of the Youth Parliament, which was the first set-up then, as it was set up in 2001, age 15. So I was still in my last year of school. There was an election of all these people that turned up on a day, and that got me into it. And so like at 16, I was turning up at these council meetings. I was probably doing quite a few weeks in my last year at school. I was doing like a 4-day week at school and 1 day out doing something else. Going to a parliament. Actually it all feels a long time ago.
That's wild. That's wild.
Really cool.
Yeah, because normally when you hear politicians, you think, is it Cambridge? What's the place out?
Oxford or Cambridge.
Oxford,
Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah,
you
none
assume
of that. No.
Bohemian Grove.
None of that. School in Southampton. 1 year at university, dropped out after that. Probably dropped out after 4 weeks, really, but stayed for the first year. So none of the normal setup.
So obviously, like you're Conservative councillor yourself. When you first started, was there? How did you decide to be Conservative or Labour or whatever else is at the time? What makes you decide on one versus the other?
Yeah, well, I suppose I did what most people do in the beginning. I came from a sort of more Labour working class family, so I sort of found myself in that camp when I was early teenager. By the time I went to college and then studied politics from a policy and philosophical point of view more properly, I was like, nah, I don't agree. I don't agree with this stuff. Believe in working hard, thinking about how you can grow, how you can serve other people. And yeah, we all need help, but principally at my core, I'm like, add value, grow, be accountable, be responsible. And that was the path I found myself on. And then my last year of college, I was still living at home. And this lady knocked on the door from the local Conservative Party. She said to my mum, do you vote for us? She said, no, but you need to speak to my son. So I spoke to her. Next few weeks, I was delivering leaflets and knocking doors for them. And then I got involved in my first election in 2004. Did one in 04, 05, 06. Wasn't one in 07. And then 08, I stood and got elected. So, politics is really straightforward. You see people that go on a political path. Most of them have just found a party, turned up, that made themselves useful, and gone on the journey. And then they go through local government, and they might go through national government, and then go the whole way. Or you do get some people who are career politicians or career families. But ultimately, I had the benefit of, starting from scratch and a lot of hills that I climbed up delivering leaflets on.
Yeah. And from what I've seen, obviously, like for those that know Rishi Sunak's from Southampton, you've obviously met him a few times, and you discussed a little bit about what you said he was like. But you went to 10 Downing Street, was it, at one point?
I've been to Downing Street a couple of times, and with Rishi, only with Rishi. I don't think Boris was in because that was too much in the COVID period. Yeah, with Rishi a few times, yeah.
So,
2 or 3 times.
What's 10 Downing Street like?
Oh, it's cool. Actually, I went when Cameron was Prime Minister as well. It is really cool. I mean, the building is beautiful. You forget that it's someone's house, though. It's an operation and it's someone's house. And the pictures on the wall, and then you go out into the garden where they host events, and that's where the summer parties were. And it's really cool. It's huge. But it's also special. Like, you're in somebody's house, but it's also the centre of government, I suppose you could say. And you walk up the road and you go through security and they open the door and you're sort of like, well, this is, and then 5 minutes later you're out in the street again, So, yeah, it's a really special place. I don't think we understand the significance and the power of the democracy that we have and the way we've created it, and the rest of the world has taken it, fine-tuned it and made it theirs. So, very, very exciting, yeah.
It's an interesting, obviously this comes very interestingly now because we've obviously had the big elections for the country as well, and I think it's interesting getting your standpoint and perspective on how things have transitioned over such a I think I'd say turbulent period of time. If we think about it, we think about the last 6 years. We had the pandemic, we've had all sorts of wars break out across the world, and then we're going into a general election. One little thing that came up obviously recently was the Trump's assassination, and I think that's an interesting area just to delve into a little bit, because I think a lot of people watching will be like, well, yeah, I heard about that. So obviously it happened, and I saw an image of if he didn't turn his head, he would be dead at this point in time. But it was interesting standpoint that am I right in saying, was it a Republican who shot Trump?
Well, allegedly so, yeah. I mean, America is interesting when it comes to all of these things, and they do it brilliantly. They make politics so much more important here. People are not going to be going and waving flags and going to rallies in the same way. But yeah, I mean, I was quite, I don't know whether this is the right wording, but it was interesting, I suppose. You could say surprising that in the first 4 years of the presidency, Trump was president, there were no assassination attempts. And then now there is, I don't know, why, and maybe there's no reason, but yeah, a sad day for democracy, really, because you can disagree with one another, you can fight one another in words and principles, but when it comes to taking out your opponents, if you disagree with them, in this case, it sounds like someone in the same party may see Trump as an opponent if they, don't agree with his variation of republicanism. Yeah, that's a dangerous place.
Because wasn't the shooter as well was in a Black Rock commercial, and
were they?
Yeah, and then obviously Black Rock something dipped just before they shorted some stock or something. Right. Just before this event, there's a lot of conspiracy style things going on. I mean, I'm always interested and curious and speculating these kind of things. I don't really know what's going on, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I just wanted to delve across that just because I thought it is such real world what's going on in the world democracy wise as well. Yeah. But I do want to dip back into local more stuff that's impacting us and the surrounding area. Now, there was a key stat that I read online which was about the obesity rates in the UK, and I found this absolutely astounding. Interestingly, the percentage it's increased is not as drastic as some people make it out to be. But when you break it down, it is considerable.
Yeah.
So this is all from gov.co.uk. This is November 2022 to November 23 census that they did on obesity and overweight people in the UK. For overweight, including obesity prevalence in adults 18 plus years, 64% in England were considered overweight or obese, and it's gone up 0.5% from the last year. That's 43.5 million people who are considered overweight, obese. Now, the only thing I'm going to step in and say immediately from a coach standpoint, this is registered on BMI.
Yeah.
So technically, we would be considered overweight or obese and go into that percentage. Only thing I want to say on it, but if you walked out your door, how many in 10 people would you see that are probably obese? Probably quite a few. Now, for yourself and locally, I don't know what kind of campaigns you've been on for like local activity, local obesity. You're a very active man yourself. So I just want to get your standpoint on current obesity areas and kind of areas maybe we could look to improve and what kind of things we could do as strategies and different parts like that.
Yeah. So when I was leader of the council, we were just coming out of COVID, and one of the things that was really important is so we split out adults and children, and children being under 18 in my view. So what we were able to do is support the kids on holiday, in the holiday period, make sure they've got things to do. Good, stimulate them. We have a real issue here of obesity because it's growing. Although the stats might say it's smaller growing, it's still a major challenge. You look around you, you know that people are struggling with weight, and not just weight, the other issues that come with it, the anxiety, the loss of productivity, the loss of self-esteem. And how do we resolve it? Well, we have to get people to take responsibility for themselves. That has to be the start point. Now, that's not always as straightforward as saying, we're not going to help you if you don't do anything, because some people need more support than others. But certainly as a city, we've spent, or as a country, we've spent a lot of money trying to intervene and educate, and those things have a place, but we've actually got to be able to say to people, if you want to live till you're 80 or to 100 a good life, you are the most important person in that decision making. If you don't want to be spending most of your time going to the NHS and take out the scenario that it's in, that obviously has got more demand growing on it in a way that it wasn't ever designed to be built to do, then you've got to be responsible for yourself. And that's a challenging mindset, because actually the last post-war period has been, if you do X, Y, Z and you need something, the service will be there to support you. We can't carry on like that. We don't have the resources financially, emotionally, spiritually, mentally to do that. And so we need to be saying to people, yeah, there's advice, there's guidance. Yes, you might have to take some of your pay packet and invest it into something that's not just reactive day to day. And that's challenging if you're struggling financially, but you've got to invest in your health. And if you don't, these are the consequences. And no amount of state intervention, in my personal opinion, is going to solve that.
I agree. I do agree. I'll let you go ahead.
I was going to say, like, when you said invest as well, I think a lot of people would think that means money, but it doesn't always mean money either.
No.
Sometimes it is just energy and time.
It's energy and time.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting. How would you say you have improved your own ability to be responsible for yourself?
Yeah, well, I've improved it by being a complete failure at it, like most of us are. We generally, we've got thousands of years of documented history on how to live your life really well. As a man thinketh, he become, in the Bible, what you reap, you sow. All these concepts are here. We know them, but we don't implement them until we have a challenge in our life where we go, if I don't implement this now, these are the consequences. So I had that, and now what I do is basically my health is my top priority. And I mean spiritual, mental, emotional, physical. Dietary health has probably been the hardest thing, because probably I'm emotionally attached to nice, sweet, sugary, high-carb food, like most of us are. But I've just had to go on a journey of unravelling it and ask myself, what do I want? And what am I prepared to trade off? And, if I want to live a good life and want to be active, then I need to do these things. And that's a journey. So if we can get people on a new journey of accountability that says, if you want to be less anxious, if you want to be more emotionally stable, if you want to be feeling the way you want to feel, then you've got to take responsibility of that. But the first point is, what do you actually want? What is it that you want for your life? How do you want to feel? How do you want to show up? How do you want to be emotionally aware of this? Do you want to be stressed all the time? Not what you're having done to you, it's what do you want? And that mindset switch is a real challenge, actually, because people say, well, I'm really busy, I've got to do this. My job demands this, my political life demands that. Yeah, but what are you demanding from it? Not the other way around. This is not a dress rehearsal. Like you do everybody else's objectives, you get to the end of your life and you just lie there and go, I wish I'd have done this. That's going to be a massive regret. So we do have to have a shift in headspace that says, and as entrepreneurs that's easier because we're used to how do we create what we want and the world flow into that. Whereas, for employees or high level people who are used to working in an organisation that demands everything from them, health goes down the list because there's always a reason. But there will always be a reason.
But how do we teach this? Because obviously I would say children in families where the parents aren't as responsible for themselves, maybe a little bit more victim thinking, if that's the right word. Those children are going to grow up with those patterns of behaviour.
Yeah.
So how do we get into the children's heads when they're at their moldable stage to get them thinking in a more responsible manner? Is there a way we can think about?
Yeah, and I think that's where the education system does come in.
Yeah.
But we've also got to think about the educators of the education system. So, we have a system, and we're not knocking the system, but we have a system that says you turn up at this time in the morning, at 9 a.m. you start this, at lunchtime the bell goes off, you do this, you're taught to do this is the instructive-based things, and we don't really want you being too creative because we can't cope with that. Well, actually, we need people to be creative and think for themselves. We don't want people saying, this is how you should think. We want people to say, how do you think? Teach them how to think, not what to think. And this is where I think the underlying piece of the world we're in right now is that the old world, post-war world, or the 20th century world is breaking because we can't continue with the headspace of somebody else knows best for you. And the impact of that is someone else is going to pick up the cost. We're in a world that says you need to take more responsibility, but who needs to guide you on that? So where does it start if you haven't come from that background? And that's a tough gig. But in an information world where there are tons of good examples, it's the chicken and an egg, isn't it? Do you wake up one morning and go, I don't like my life the way it is, I want it to be like this, who do I follow? But if you don't know any different to what you know, how are you going to know that that's an option? Usually, though, it comes down to desire. Usually you see something, you feel something, you have to have that bit of inspiration in yourself that says, I'm not sure I want my life to be like it is right now. Maybe I want it to be like it is over there, and I can change it. But that's really difficult. I mean, as leader of the council, I used to say when I was talking to people, we want people to fulfill their dream, but there are a whole bunch of people that don't even have a dream. And how do we get them to even know that they're worthy of having a dream is a challenge. So I think we've got to start with kids, of course, and we've got to say to adults, it's okay that you're going to fall over and you're going to find your own flow, but when you do, we want to celebrate you. We want to celebrate your failure into success, not knock you and shame guilt you and push you over the side because we think that you've done something wrong. And that's where the cultural shift is coming. And it's definitely coming because the whole institutions of the world that we know are breaking down. We can see it, you can feel it in the air. So it's a very abstract thing that we need to do, but it's not going to be straightforward.
Yeah, well, myself and Dan as coaches, obviously we're always playing more of a preventative role than the opposite. We're always playing a reactive role to people's health rather than a preventative.
Yeah.
People come to us when they're feeling pain for some element of their health that's gone wrong, or they don't feel self-esteem to the way they want to, and so it's those people that are potentially already there are not the people that aren't going to really come to us unless they're like athletes going into big sport, etc. But I definitely see the obesity crisis being a major problem in terms of us growing as a fitness industry in terms of helping them, because they're just I
do want to make a point on that, and this is an interesting one for anyone who's not in the health and fitness space, either as a professional or been in a gym. As a personal trainer, I will openly say I rarely train what I would consider very obese people. I think I've trained one who is genuinely obese, and I'm talking like hundreds of kilos, and they need that help for a health. Most people who come to me could arguably, they still have good health markers. Arguably, they're not obese. They probably wouldn't go into the very obese category. But yes, they can lose a little bit of weight and their health will improve. And I find that such an interesting metric that as someone in the fitness space, the people that really need help aren't the ones that come our direction. It's the people who have tried to seek help in the past, achieved a little bit of a goal, but then need a little bit more guidance on it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out a way, and for a while now, I've stewed on it, I've thought about it, I've tried to think of ways of doing this. How do you think we can get these people who are struggling with their health and well-being, probably don't want to go outside because of the size they are? I used to have a guy I went to uni with who couldn't even fit in the uni shower. Like, for me, that's astounding. But these aren't the people that are reaching out for help. Do you think there's any ways that we can get these people out into the world, asking for help, finding guidance? Apologies for interrupting the podcast. We know you're getting fully engrossed into this episode, and we really appreciate you stopping on the video on YouTube or on Spotify if you found us through one of the search pages. Make sure to leave a review and a subscription if you haven't already. But we just wanted to interject a point here that me and Nick have 15 years of coaching experience between us, and it's only getting better as we've got better guests on the podcast. The only way we can do that, though, is with the growth of our program that we've just released. We've got a 12-month Perform Well program, which has just dropped, and we'd love you guys to get involved in it. If you want to learn more details, make sure to head to the description, as we've got our website in there, which can give you a full overlay of the program. We're looking to help career-driven professionals, entrepreneurs, small business owners, and anyone dominate their life by improving their lifestyle. Me and Nick like to claim ourselves as experts in this area, and if you want to check out some of our other transformations, I'm sure you do. We've got some amazing people who have performed so well off the back of this program. Have a cracking day, and we really appreciate your time. Let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah. So everybody is on their own journey and timeline, and that becomes the challenge. But I think when at your level of what you're doing, you're going to have the people that have gone over that threshold, have made the decision, I want to go do something. And there'll be a ton of people that are back on the, if you like, that backed upstream at different levels. What we need to probably be able to do is make sure there's communication to them in our world in some way, shape or form, that when they're ready, there's somewhere to go. But it's always the challenge. It's always the challenge of those that need it the most might not get access to it. But, and I think this is controversial, but I think it's crucial, having been in this position myself many times, you have to make a decision you want to go over the precipice. And if you make the decision to go over the precipice, the universe is going to find solutions some way. You know, I make the decision I want to get healthier, suddenly I bump into someone in a coffee shop, you know. It happens, doesn't it? You know, you have to make a decision that you want something different, and then the world flows in. You can't expect the world to start flowing in if your doors mentally, emotionally, spiritually are shut to it. And it's really difficult to say that to someone who's in a very dark place, because when we're in dark places, the last thing we want to do is open up to the world. And so there's a bit of me that philosophically says, actually, we need to go through that darkness a little bit. And it's, you know, this is controversial, because, oh, that's a bit nasty. Well, you know, we're good and bad. We're dark and light. We need to go through the darkness, keep going, and then suddenly we go, I don't want this anymore. I want to. And the minute we make that decision, the world can open up to help us. It's very difficult. Well, old saying, you can't help those who won't help themselves. Yeah. And it's, you know what? People say, well, that's a nasty thing. It burns us in our soul, doesn't it, to see someone that we can't help because they won't let us help them, but we can't help them. And it's excruciatingly painful to watch. But it's a bit, and again, this is controversial just for some, there is a bit of sort of tough love that says, actually, you've got to go through that and burn it and come out the other end and go, yeah, I want to make change. And the minute you say that, the right people show up and help you. And it's just a journey of life. But it's become unfashionable to say that you need to go through tough times to come out the other side. And people don't really want to hear it, because we all want to, and I'm no different. We all want to, like, oh, I want a result now. Why aren't you going to do it for me? Well, there's a reason I'm not doing it for you. You've got to do it for yourself.
It's a really good point. Go ahead.
Do you know who it sounds like? It sounds like Jordan Peterson. Do you know?
Yeah.
He says about integrating your shadow self.
Yeah.
And like, you have to go through that. Yeah. And I did go through a stage myself. I'm sure we all did through COVID, where we all had like a bit of a negative spell. But I had a therapist, and I was taught to appreciate these emotions, and like, these are completely normal to feel. And I have to say, it was 2 years of absolute hell. Yeah. But I came out the other side feeling a lot better. Yeah. And I do 100% agree. Like, you have to go through that darkness, and it's a bit like yin yang. You know?
It is total yin yang.
Yeah. It's, you know, we're that line between the light and the darkness, trying to find our way. Yeah. And then as we get older, we get more wise to it, and we're able to like then teach people younger than us about, you know, what we've discovered ourselves. And I do feel like as you get older, you tend to start to figure this out more. Yeah. Because I think you're blind to it when you're younger.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
not
nobody
everyone,
tells
but-
you it's an issue, do they? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
if you do this, you'll be fine, but don't do that. You know, once you get into 30, you realise that's not the case. But I think the real challenge with what we're saying, though, is if you are financially in a place you don't have any money and you're in a really dark place where you've got no one around you, how do you decide to get out of that? And that's really, you know, how do you pay for the therapist? How do you do these things? And that is really excruciating, but we've got to have, in my opinion, faith that actually things are going to work in you. Life is about growth. It's not about punishment. And if we can say to people, yeah, you're going to go through these tough things, but something somewhere will show up for you. And if you choose to take that path, the door will open, but you've got to choose to do it.
I do want to just talk on, you spoke on a level of affluence there, and I do have another stat that I want to throw out there. I'm loving the stats today. So it was a stat that actually it was in lower socioeconomic groups, we see the highest level of inactivity.
Yep.
So activity is decreased by 2.2% in low affluent individuals. So this is the question. Is exercise getting too expensive?
Well, I think if we look at what exercise is, if you're looking at do you want a personal trainer and do you want to compete at that level, it's expensive for a lot of people, right? But actually, if you are in a place where you have no money, or your money is allocated in a different way, because we do live in a country where there's a lot of financial support in a way that there wasn't when the social welfare system was created, but costs are high. So you can still walk, you could still go sit in the park and you could sit at home and do some press-ups and sit, you know, actually start with do 2 press-ups for a week, and then we all know what's going to happen. Next week you're going to do 3. It's a progression, or it's slow. But if the challenge we've got, if we're in that headspace, is we want to do 100. You know, we want to do 100, and we want to be competing. We want to put social media posts everywhere, and we're all guilty of this because we all love it, don't we? You know, but that's the world we are in now. But it doesn't start that way. So yes, exercise can be expensive, a bit like food. But if you buy highly processed, highly expensive delivered food, it is expensive. But if you go to Lidl and buy a ton of fruit and vegetables and healthy stuff, it's cheap. But you've got to make the time, you've got to make the effort, and your body is going to be emotionally craving things that aren't rewarded by having healthy food. And that's our whole biochemistry is craving intense, sugary, fast, fatty food, which is more expensive when we're in a stressed environment. And if money's an issue as well, the stress level goes up. And if you're working nights, or you're working shifts, or you're working difficult things, and you've got kids, I mean, that's a tough gig for us, you know, me, I don't have any kids, you know, to sit here and go, well, you should be doing this. It's not a should, it's just, there is something you can do.
There's a lot of 18-year-old fitness trainers that say to middle-aged mums, like, you should be doing, you've got all the time in the world, while they're literally at their mums.
I mean, we need a Jordan Peterson point, empathetic, understand, but also provide accountability. So I totally understand you, I empathize with your problem, but I can tell you there is a solution somewhere if you want to find it. So yes, conventional was, you know, go to the gym, it's going to cost you a lot of money, walk around the park, do some press-ups at home, do some sit-ups at home, and we probably won't want to hear that. But that's okay. Our job is to push through that, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, I haven't got a stat for this, but I think you could probably go around the world and see this as a problem. But, you know, British people seem to be a little bit more miserable than other people in the world, from what I've seen. Yeah. I don't know if it's the sun. Maybe it's because we get so much rain. Now, does that make us mentally tougher because of all our crap weather? Or does it make us worse, make us miserable compared to other countries?
Yeah, I mean, we're a big generalization, aren't we? But there is, if you look at the US, which is probably the most comparable country to the UK, and you know their creation was built on rebelling against our structure, they generally have, colloquially, on a broad generalization, a more positive mindset, more ambitious. Their economy is very different to ours. Their thinking is very different, but the weather is also very different. You know, and it does make a difference. We all know if you get up in the morning, you have sunshine all the time, actually, you know, the other challenges become easier. And the unpredictability of British weather literally probably does play. Summer holidays now, if you've got kids, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them or whatever, you know, you can't plan, and it's another stress, isn't it? So, yeah, I think we are very stoic by nature, culture, but maybe we are more miserable. I think...
I went to Australia for a year, and I just remember everyone being so happy, and there was so much sun, and everyone's having a barbecue, and we're like, we're just indoors, like,
yeah. Yeah, and the weather does do things to people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it affects our entire biochemistry, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So,
Well, we spoke to Phil Lerney, he was one of the top rated PTs in London, guy that we really look up to in both of our businesses. And we spoke about the circadian rhythm and how actually circadian rhythm's always impacted a lot by light and how much light you get into your eyes at the start of the day. Now, we think in the UK, let's think just at the start of the day, when we get to the winter months, it's not light till like 8 o'clock in the morning. People are getting up and the first thing you see is darkness. In my opinion, without going too philosophical here, all you see is darkness for the rest of the day, realistically, even if the sun comes out. So I do think in some retrospect, it does become almost just a cloud that sits on our heads a little bit throughout the day, not allowing us to think more clearly. And obviously we can go into the whole conversation about there's supplements to help with that, but people don't want to keep paying for supplements to help a simple problem. Now we work with a lot of business owners. I've recently had another business owner sign up with me in terms of wanting to help and improve his health and well-being. He's got 2 kids. His wife also is one of the directors of the business, so they work in tandem.
Yeah.
And they have said one of the biggest things they come across is that time burden. Yeah. It's that time to get shit done and allow yourself the time to train. Now, for yourself, how have you got any tips out there for people that when it comes to improving your health and well-being, when it comes to time, have you got any tips out there for people to help them jump that barrier a little bit?
yeah, it's a choice. And I'll explain why. It's a choice of what's more important to you. And at 29, nearly 30, I built several businesses. I'd scaled. I was successful, if you like, into the millions of revenue. And I had burnout, and I had to get out, and I lost everything. I literally lost it. So I've been in these places where I can't afford to pay for exercise or food and this and everything else. And it was always, well, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. I prioritized the wealth creation because that was the most important thing to me. I wasn't going to listen to anyone that said, well, the opportunity cost of your time putting 90% into it is your relationship will go, your health will go, these things will go. And I was like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. And I didn't care because my actions told me I didn't care. But, at that stage, my eyes were going, my hands were shaking. I was working a lot, or continually on the treadmill for 15 years, running hard. And I had to make a choice. And I waited. Well, I didn't wait. I got to a stage where I had no choice, really, because I knew if I didn't stop, my adrenals were just going to collapse, probably. Maybe a bit dramatic, but they just literally were, everything was going like this. My eyes were going, and I was just all over the place. I was probably eating 5,000-6,000 calories a day sometimes just to keep going. So I made a choice. I was like, my life's never going to be the same as this again. And that's meant, what do I need to prioritize now that I didn't prioritize before? And how do I want it to be moving forward? But it's also, who are the people that are doing that I needed to follow, and how have they managed to do it? Because in our ego mind, it says, well, nobody understands me. My life is different. I haven't got time. Well, that's not true. There is time. It's how you're allocating it. It does mean, though, if you're running a business and you're giving all of your energy to that, you're going to have to make trade-offs. So either do it in the morning, do it in the middle of the day, do it in the evening. But Jim Rohn, who I really like his stuff, the one saying that stuck hard, if you want to work harder on yourself than you work on your business. As soon as I got that mentally, I was like, yeah, this makes sense. Allocate the time and stick to it. And if that's the morning, evening, afternoon, whatever else, yes, there's trade-offs, but you will see the world change, and you have to have faith the trade-off is going to work. But you guys know better than me. You start going to the gym, you're not going to see results in week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, probably, whatever, week 20, 30, 40. You have to have faith, but you have to want to. You have to have the desire.
That's so true.
And if you don't, you won't do it, or you'll do it temporarily. But it's also more now that I've learned, it's how you see yourself mentally. That, are you a disciplined person? Are you not? I was always late for things. I never paid things on time. I was stretching this all over the place. I didn't want to be there anymore. But I got to that place where I probably didn't have a choice. I had to change it, and lost everything as a result. And then I've built brick by brick back. And it's a good learning curve, but if you can avoid it, I would. Because, once you're out of the ring, it takes a long time to get back in it.
You know what's crazy? We've had quite a few podcast guests now, business owners, entrepreneurs. We train a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, and they all tell the same story. They all worked their business, they destroyed their health in the process, and then they finally decided to do something about it. But, they're all successful. So clearly there was some method in the madness, right? But But how much more successful would you have been, do you reckon, if you went back 10 years and you took the health thing seriously at that age compared to where you'd be now in terms of your successes?
Well, that's a really good point. So, you can't, when you start out in anything, you have to put the hours in because you don't know what the hell you're doing. So you've got to learn more, you've got to do more. I mean, it's the old adage, what would I do now, what would I do differently now if I knew what I knew now? Well, I can't answer that question because I only know what I know now because I did it back then. So, but I think if you see things as temporal and then you want to make changes, it's okay. But once we get into our 30s and 40s, we really can't be carrying on the way we were doing in our 20s. So yeah, there's a window. But if you can build those habits from scratch, very few people are successful generally on old stats. Of course, there's a whole new world opening up. But most people start to get more successful in their 40s, late 30s, 40s, even if they made it in their 20s, because keeping consistency is challenging in business. Now, that may change with the new world that we're in because technology is allowing people to do things quickly. But in terms of long-term success, however we want to define it, you really want a balance of abundance. You want to have a good life, you want to have good wealth, and you want to have good family and good health and everything else. But if you only want to be successful in business, then yeah, just give all your time to that. But there's a cost, isn't there? And I also don't think you need to in the same way now. And there's so much information, there's so much connectivity. You can work smarter. And there's one principle that wasn't there. There's so much more collaboration. Like, I'm good at this, you're good at that. How do we collaborate? The thinking wasn't the same way. So you can share resources in a way that previously everybody was like, no, we just compete. But there's a door open. No, we just compete with one. But why compete with someone who's doing the complementary service?
Yeah.
So that makes it easier. But you still got to graft. But it's how you graft.
But the thing is though, every day you go around, you see people working hard, harder than probably a lot of people that have a lot of money do. In terms of I'm talking bricklayers, I'm talking nurses, doctors. They work their asses off, and they're not making it.
No.
But there's some element of obviously skills, building the skills that you talked about. There's also an element that I don't think we touched upon is who you know.
Yeah.
Because obviously in your world of politics, you've met some people that are, in power, in control of a lot of things, right? So they're very highly powerful people. How much does that influence your ability to grow your businesses?
Your network is your net worth.
Yeah.
But remember, everybody has to start somewhere. So everyone has to start somewhere to get in those places. And, I didn't come from any of that background, but I would have met people on the way that would have given me the opportunity. So everybody that's been successful has had someone that's helped them. That's why I try and make it my mission to help others. Because if someone says to me, can you help me with this one thing and I don't know them? Of course. Now, I can't do it every day, but I will do one thing. Because one conversation, one connection, the world can change for you. So, yeah, it's important to do the work, but you're right. Hard work does not make success, but successful people, and equally determines what success is to you. But people that have grafted, they see it as a journey of fine tuning their art form, and then they're working on their art form and their self in a way it's just a different. If let's take a gym analogy. If you're smashing it every day, but you're doing it in a way that's over egging your body, eventually something's going to snap. But if you feel like you're in flow, you watch people in flow and just it looks effortless. Well, the work to get to effortless was a lot of work, but it's been fun and enjoyable and they're working through it. It's a different energy. And I think what we really want people to be is we want them to be creatively in their flow, not just doing something that they feel they have to do because they have no choice. And actually life is much more enjoyable but you have to go through the former to get to the latter. But you don't have to stay in that tough space. But that is a mindset game. And I've had to go through that journey of why am I working? What's the emotions driving my need to prove myself all the time when actually I'm worth more than that. So it's a whole self-esteem game. It's a whole mindset game. It's how do you see yourself and how do you value yourself and what validation do you get from the world. And that's comes back to Jim Rohn saying work harder on yourself and you work on your business. And that's the route out of slogging to more fun, in my opinion.
There's so many people that slog out there. As I say, we've had so many business owners on. As you say, they say similar things to yourself, and that slog nature was something that I valued myself. I'm 25, and I fortunately have been, graciously accounted with Nick. So we've been working together for years. So he's taught me a lot along the lines from when he's been in business and things he'd do differently now. And I think with a lot of youngsters, they want to set up businesses. I think entrepreneurship. We were talking to Dodge, who was on a previous pod. He was saying that business is becoming cool. Yep. Business is coming trendy. Good. Entrepreneurship is trendy, which I think is fantastic. And I was even speaking to some of my brother's friends at his graduation. They were like, I don't know what I want to do after uni. And I genuinely asked them the question. It was like, what's your dream? Like, what do you want to do with what you're doing? Where do you want to get to? What's your vision? They're like, don't really know. I like, might work for this company. Could do this. I was like, ever thought of starting your own business or working in a business, then starting a business? And they were like, I don't know about that. Sounds really hard. And I'm like, life's hard. Business is hard. But when you get to the end of it, it's great. And I think, fortunately, more youngsters are starting to develop the idea of actually visions are the most important thing to chase after. Not just a well-paying job that's going to pay a house, that you have a family and a dog, and then suddenly you live till 80 and jobs are good. It's now we've got a little bit more of a dynamic flow, as she was saying, in society and how we're working. And the final question I want to cap off here is, projectively wise, this is again very, very opinion based. So I just want to get your opinion on this. Where do you think we're going to be in 20 to 30 years as a country in terms of a health and well-being setting? Do you think we're going to be graciously improved, or do you think there's still going to be an uphill battle we're fighting?
If we continue on the path we're on, which is, in my view, a belief that something is going to pick up the piece financially. And this goes right the way across. So, I'm a great believer in the new world of blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and the whole concept that the whole concept of what we created in the 20th century is no longer serving us, and it will not serve us in the way that was designed to in the future. So we take the health and well-being, which is a component of the psychology in that particular area of it. We're in deep territory. We're in dangerous territory because our competitors and our foe around the world have a different mindset. They don't have they're spending their margin on growing their economies and on developing their headspace. We're spending it on reactive healthcare in a way that the NHS budget has over 1.5 million people employed in it, and 150, 60 to 80, depending on if you add in England, Wales and Scotland, £1 billion in it, and it hasn't got enough money and people. I mean, these numbers are staggering. Oh, we'll give more money. We'll do this. We'll do that. It's unsustainable. It is unsustainable as a principle. We're spending £100 billion a year in borrowed money. That's £330 million a day this country is spending on interest only. We're not servicing, we're not paying down the debt, and we're doing that to fund this. And then people are saying we need more money. And you go, well, where does all this go? Where does it end? And we don't want to have a conversation about it. And it's easier now. I'm not in the political system, having stood down on the 2nd of May, not because you can't say these things, but because you can see outside the system as well when you're outside of it. Because, of course, anything we're in, we get, a little bit more pigeonholed. So we've got to change the direction. Now, I suppose my philosophy says to me, we won't change the direction until the pain gets great enough for everyone to go, we need to change the direction. Whether that's the same with our currency is depreciating to pay for all these things. So everybody's working harder, they're getting more stressed, their health is suffering. To bank in hours of currency that's devaluating to pay for things that are going up by proportion because we're printing more of a currency that has less value. That's you stand back as an alien and look at planet Earth and you go, ooh, these guys are going on a little bit of a hamster wheel here, aren't they? So we've got to come off that. Now, whether we come off that, I hope we come off that because we find a better solution. Human behavior generally tells us, as we've said, we come off of it when we see the pain of what we're doing is greater than the pain of change. And that sounds really depressive and miserable, but it's not. It's just nature. And I hope we find a new way of doing things. But we can. The hope, the potentiality, the possibility of opening up new wealth-creating strategies that aren't just slog, that say to people, you may have no degree, you may have worked as a teacher your whole life. What are your skill sets in that? What skill sets can you take from being a teacher, a nurse, a plumber, whatever you've been doing, and deploy in the private sector in a way that adds value to someone that is not paid at a fixed rate, because you're solving problems and you determine the value of your solution based on the greatest size of the problem. That's how the market works. So then everybody can be free. Now, okay, someone's got to do some jobs, but let's say we all start with a job and morph into being an entrepreneur. And then as soon as we morph into an entrepreneur, there's a load more people in the marketplace. So this becomes a much more hopeful. So if we can say to people, yeah, maybe it's a bit tough for 5 years, but at least there's something better on the end of it. If you do X, Y, Z, and we can build a platform for that, and we can democratize wealth creation to create a better life for everybody. That's kind of my mission. That's why I've stepped out of the political realm, really, to go, how do I carry on with that mission in a way that we can really give people something to be hopeful for and give them power back. You are, it's not going to happen overnight, but you can create your own destiny, and we can help you to do that. So yeah, I'm hopeful, but the current path doesn't say that, although it might do if we then decide that we're fed up with the current path. And that's a choice for people to make. And hopefully, democracy is about honouring. Democracy is not necessarily about doing the right thing, although it should be. It's about honouring what the public have said. And we might sit there and go, we disagree with that. Well, that's tough, because these are the rules we've said. They voted for a government, A, B, C, whatever government that is. That's what has to happen.
Mate, amazing, man. Do you know what? We have to end, but honestly, great having you on.
Absolute pleasure.
I mean, I had a few conversations with yourself over a beer, I think, a few
Yeah,
years
I think we
ago.
were around the corner from here, weren't we? Yeah.
I could tell you you had this kind of esoteric, spiritual side of you, which you have got a deep philosophical mind, and you can paint a picture of things that people probably can't do themselves. And like when you say it like that, it makes so much sense. I really hope, obviously, people that listen to this found value. And
I sure have, definitely, 100%.
I hope so.
Dan will wrap up because
all right, I will.
Dan's the man.
So we normally plug people, their businesses, and themselves. So you're more than welcome to plug social media handles, websites, whatever you fancy here. What would you like to say to the people, or just round off?
Well, firstly, thank you to you chaps for inviting me on. You can find me on LinkedIn, Daniel Fitzhenry. I mean, my future now, as I said, is about that mission. And I'm involved in several projects and businesses that are about democratizing wealth and creating a better world for all of us. And I love chatting with people. I don't really have a defined path of where I'm going at the minute. Great to have a chat and see what we can do and work together to do more for everybody.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and thank you guys for watching. We appreciate you guys, so make sure to subscribe, like, follow, and if you're over on Spotify, give us the lovely 5 stars. We really appreciate it. Make sure to check out all of our social handles, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. We'll catch you later.